Thanks for joining us on Live on KEXP at Home. I'm Cheryl Waters, and today with me it's Rufus Wainwright. Hi, Rufus. Welcome.
Hello.
It is so wonderful to be talking to you today.
Thank you.
It's been a long time since you've been live on KEXP, but I've been following along all these years.
Yeah, no, I love Seattle, and I miss it terribly. I miss all the cities of the world that I've visited in the past. So it's nice to imagine being there at the moment.
I imagine that you miss all the cities in the world. You'd love to be out there playing this beautiful new album, Unfollow the Rules. You've been incredibly generous with your time and talent this year, though. You've really embraced the online medium with your free
Yes.
daily quarantunes, the robe recitals, and all the online shows that you've done. They've been so personal. You're often showing parts of your house, and I know that it's been such a treat for me and fans and so fun. Hopefully it's been fun for you as well.
No, it's been amazing. I mean, the main one that we're doing now is called Rufus Retro Wainwright Spective. And we're actually doing all of my albums, all of my studio albums, and plus some extra fun things. But every Friday we do half an album, and we're doing it all chronologically. I think now we're up to, Release the Stars or something, and then we have a special guest. A special Hollywood guest, someone like Jamie Lee Curtis or Darren Criss, or people all grounded here in Tinseltown. So it's that's been fantastic to be able to review my work, and then of course I have a lot of time to write new stuff as well because I'm around my piano a lot at home.
Well, speaking of Seattle and special guests, I just listened to your Brandi Carlile cover of, or Brandi Carlile and you covering Sandy Denny's song, Who Knows Where the Time Goes. And my God, that was absolutely magnificent. It's sort of incredible what you can do. She was in Seattle, you were in LA, I mean, it was just like you were in the room together.
Yeah. Well, I've been a fan of hers and a friend of hers actually for quite a while now. Last couple of years, and it was sort of they asked me who I would like to do something with for the show, and I said Brandi, and then that song, of course, Who Knows Where the Time Goes, just immediately struck me as a perfect vehicle for both of us, especially with the pandemic and that question that everybody's asking right now about what is time. Really, and so it was really great that we got to do that.
I played it on my show today on KEXP, and the emails and texts just lit up. People were going insane.
Wonderful.
Absolutely love it.
Good.
I've been watching a lot of the robe recitals, and watching you play piano is just otherworldly. I see you in concert all the time, but getting to see you up close like that, it looks like it's just an extension of your body. It's like you're just breathing. And how often do you play? And I'm wondering, do you consider it practice, or is it more meditation?
For me, the piano is really, it's very, what can I say? It is an extension of myself. I in no way consider myself an amazing pianist. I think I'm a very good pianist. I think though that musically there's something that occurs with me and that instrument which is very unique, and I mean there's so many things. My mother was an amazing pianist. Like, she was the type of instrumentalist, Kate McGarrigle, so sadly no longer with us, but she could, pick out a tune and jam with people, and she knew all the standards and stuff, and could play jazz or play classical. Like, I'm not versatile in that way. I'm actually quite rigid, but what I do well, and something happens definitely with me and the piano when I go in there.
Do you play pretty much every day?
I play every day. Yeah. I try to play every morning in my robe. I go downstairs and I play for at least an hour, at least. So I think as an instrumentalist, you kind of have to play all the time. Not all the time, but you have to play it pretty much every day, or try to. It's important.
The new album, absolutely magnificent, Unfollow the Rules. And I know that following your 2012 record, Out of the Game, you made a deliberate decision to step back from making pop records, and that ended up being a 7-year break.
Yeah.
And you said that it was because of your great love of opera that you totally wanted to immerse yourself in that opera universe. And to do that for you, you felt like you had to disappear for a while. I'm wondering, was that scary?
Well, I mean, it was, I wouldn't say it was scary. I would say, though, that it was overwhelming at times, you know, kind of being faced with this gargantuan context, which opera is, and it's something. It's a type of music and a world that I adore, and that I will return to again. But once you're in it, it requires all of your energy and all of your cylinders, and you really can't sort of, you know, dabble. So I was. Yeah, there's scary moments, but ultimately it's incredibly fulfilling, you know, when it all comes together, and thankfully it did. If it hadn't have come together, which there's always a chance, and there were some, you know, touch and go moments, it can be incredibly devastating. But thankfully I pulled it off. But it was I was happy to return to the pop world for a bit, just to lower the pressure a little bit, because so it's good to be back.
Well, it was a very fruitful time, obviously.
Yes.
You produced 2 operas, and I understand you have some commissions that came out of that, so more work to keep you busy.
Yes.
But what ignited that passion for coming back to writing pop songs, and when did that start for you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was definitely, before my first opera, Prima Donna, which really, that whole process really began about 10 years ago, even before Out of the Game. But up until then, I was in the hamster wheel of the pop world, and was, you know, making albums and then touring, and then writing songs and then making albums and touring, you know, repeat the cycle. And that you got to be in that for a little while. But I ultimately, I didn't want to be, I didn't want to lose my my passion for my work, so I had to mix it up. It was important to step away, and also I do feel in retrospect that I needed to have a newfound appreciation of where I came from. You know, I needed to rediscover songwriting through opera again, and I do, and what ended up happening, which was great, is that this, you know, the new album, Unfollow the Rules, Grammy nominated, Unfollow the Rules, I know, is which I'm quite excited about. But anyways, a lot of those songs most of those songs were written in that 7-year period, and what was great is that the songs, they were written because I just needed to write a song. I wasn't necessarily writing it for an album. I wasn't thinking, oh, is this going to make it on the radio, or does this make sense to, you know, to release now? It was just like, no, I need to write a song to feel better, or to, you know, try and figure out what's going on emotionally. So I was very fortunate to have that distance.
Well, you've recorded 4 of the songs from that album for us today. Let's listen to the first one now. We're live on KEXP at Home with Rufus Wainwright, and this is the song Trouble in Paradise.
I was going round from the town to the country, then going back round from the country back to the town. I was making rounds from the back to my forehead, then going back round from the front to the back of my crown. There's always trouble in paradise. Don't matter if you drinks and eats or on ice. There's always trouble in paradise. Don't matter taught you what's the true. But there's always trouble in paradise. And I bet I'll be there, 'cause you know, in fact, I'm actually rather
That was Trouble in Paradise from Rufus Wainwright's latest album, Unfollow the Rules. And that's the first song on your new record. And this record is deeply emotional, and it goes for me to unexpected places, which when I think about it really could describe all of your records.
Yeah.
But every record, I feel that in a new and different way. And you've talked about how Unfollow the Rules is kind of a bookend partner with your 1998 self-titled debut. They were both created in LA, even recorded at the same studio. What was your intention behind the full circle style of creation?
Yeah, no, my husband Jorn and I, we basically decided to move to Los Angeles, essentially to be closer to our daughter Viva, and who we share custody with her mother, and so we wanted to be here, and that brought us here. But definitely the minute I arrived, and especially since also we were living in Laurel Canyon, it just made so much sense for me to, and it fell on the 20th anniversary of my first album. It just became painfully obvious that I'd come full circle, back to this city, back to this sensibility, back to just my rebirth as a songwriter. So I wanted to just take some of those same ingredients that I used years ago and add them with new ones, like the great producer Mitchell Froome, who did a fabulous job, but some of the same musicians like Jim Keltner and so forth, and just really have a kind of not so much test myself, but just see how this racehorse was doing and what he'd picked up along the way. So it was a pleasant surprise in the end. And in a lot of ways, what was, I think, the most entertaining part was that, when I made my first album 20 years ago, I was signed to a major label, DreamWorks Records, which at the time was huge. No longer exists, but at the time it was massive, and it cost almost $1 million to make the record, and I was living at the Chateau Marmont, and I had, I rented a car for 3 years, so whatever. It was the most lavish situation the one could ever hope for, and this time it was like, we had to be so careful and so parsimonious and so kind of, stringent on because there was no budget, and I was basically paying for everything myself, and the exercise of trying to make it sound as glorious as the first record was challenging, but we pulled it off. I think we managed, because because it's still the same rooms, it's still the same idea of it sounding warm, of giving it a warmth, giving it a depth, giving it a lot of mastery, in working with a lot of those musicians. So it was a good exercise on many fronts.
You absolutely pulled it off. And I think about, the inflated budgets that you talk about, which was indicative of the time. But when you listen to this record, it doesn't feel like it is suffering in any way. I mean, you have strings on so many of the albums. You're working with these incredible legendary musicians. I mean, what does that make you think about what it actually takes to make a record? Really makes you rethink that.
In a funny way, I feel it's probably an ingredient that's missing in a lot of overly kind of thought out records from that period, or from many periods previous, where it was so kind of, there was so much money to just throw around that sometimes you made great records and it sounded great, and other times it was just it was kind of dead. But certainly having to not, to hold back and to really, cherish the time and the experience and really put in only what was absolutely necessary. I think it made it better musically. It helped it musically in the end. It was a good lesson in that way.
It does sound like you were really excited about the vision that the producer Mitchell Froom had for this record. How did you end up working with him, and what did you like about his style and approach?
Well, I mean, one of the biggest, one of my great discoveries, I mean, I knew about him for years, but who I'm rediscovering and really discovering for the first time and really fundamentally understanding how important a figure he is Randy Newman. I mean, I was always compared to him early on. I didn't know his music. I mean, I knew, I Love LA, We Love LA or whatever. That's the song that I knew. Like, I wasn't aware of the depth of his work. And then when I was looking at producers, I really listened to the work that Mitchell did with Randy, the last few records that they've worked together on. And then I kind of fell into this Randy Newman, jungle, and it's funny because actually he has, of course, an album called Trouble in Paradise himself, and there is something, so I blame it on Randy Newman. You can always blame it on Randy Newman. It's fine. He doesn't care.
Well, he's certainly the master of his craft. That's not the first time I've heard a musician of quite renown as you are say that they discovered Randy Newman and listened to his music really deeply and found an appreciation of it that they never really had thought about on the surface.
Yeah. So I'm very, and I'm, I'm even like, I get kind of embarrassed because there was actually a period where I hung out with Randy a little bit because Lenny Waronker, who signed him and worked with him, had signed me and worked with me. And there was one moment when Randy and I were in an office, Lenny's office, and Randy was saying, like, Lenny doesn't like me anymore. He only likes you, and I think he was a little bit pissed. And of course now in retrospect, I'm like, Randy Newman was jealous of me. Like, if I had been a fan, I think it would have just been too much. But thankfully I was innocent and blissfully so.
The new album from Rufus Wainwright, Unfollow the Rules, we're live on KEXP at home, and let's listen to the song My Little You.
You were thought of in the dressing room of La Divina, where your parents spent too much time in front of the mirror. In the Conservatorio Musicale Luigi Cherubini, my little you. Daddy putting on his makeup and wearing black feathers. Mama wading through the river Styx with all the answers. Back and forth between the living and the dead, lipstick glances you, my little you. Don't let anybody out here tell you what you gotta do here.
Rufus, it sounded like you just really wanted to have fun in the studio and make a great record. And like you were just ready. I've heard you say in interviews that you were just ready to surrender on this record.
Yes. No, I was ready. I didn't feel as though I had any axe to grind. And that there was, and let's just say that's a harder place to get to than one would think. I mean, yes, if one is, as a youth, able to sort of just throw up their hands and be like, whatever, let's just have fun with this. all the power to you, because it took me years to just sort of loosen my grip on what I was doing, and I think having had that grip for so long definitely gave me something. I think it trained me in a lot of ways. So yeah, but this record I was definitely ready to just let go and have fun with it, yeah. I think it has there's a certain freedom in this record that's nice.
There's also a certain vibe on the record. It's heavy at parts, but it also has a lot of hope in it.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you moved to Laurel Canyon, which has such a musical history and a legacy and a tradition. And I feel like I can hear that vibe in the record.
Yeah. No, that was meant to be. I mean, one of the greatest connections and this is also kind of a late blooming situation where, I always knew that, my mother, as I mentioned, my mother, Kate McGarrigle, she was in this great band, the McGarrigle Sisters, and who they ended up writing a lot of songs for Linda Ronstadt and Emmylou Harris and people like that in the 70s and 80s. And so I always knew that, of course, but I grew up in Canada, which really felt very far away from all of this and California thing. But recently they had that amazing Linda Ronstadt documentary on CNN. And I didn't,
so good.
Yeah, and I didn't watch it for a long time, and people had said, there's a McGarrigle moment in there where they talk about Heart Like a Wheel, because that was a huge hit for Linda, and then I was on a plane recently and I was watching it, and I was really dumbfounded by how significant that was when my Aunt Anna had written that song and Linda covered it and named her album that, and that album really kind of was a big part of her career. So it was sort of, and there's just little moments like that where I'm like, oh no, I'm really from Laurel Canyon, even though I never lived here, like I didn't grow up here, but musically, because of my parents, I'm a continuation of this tradition that, where Laurel Canyon really was one of the beating hearts of that of songwriting. So it makes a lot of sense that I'm here in a lot of ways, even though it's not, I don't consider it, where I come from or anything.
What was it like returning after 20 years? And obviously you want to be there to be near your daughter, but have you enjoyed being there?
Yes. No, I mean, look, LA in general I seem to always experience incredibly fundamental events here, whether it's having a child here or experiencing the pandemic here or making my first album. There's something about me in this town where I go through the big questions. So it's great to be back. I don't know if I want to end up here, but everybody in LA says that, so we'll see. But I'm very partial to this city, and I do love it.
Talking about Laurel Canyon and Canada, one of my favorite songs on the record is Damsel in Distress.
Thank you.
And there's a nod on there to fellow Canadian Joni Mitchell, who, of course, was a big part of the Laurel Canyon scene. Can you talk a little bit about that? I've read in interviews and heard you speak about there being no Joni Mitchell being played in your house growing up.
Yeah. No, I mean, my mother, Kate, was quite averse to Joni Mitchell's music for a couple of reasons. One reasonable one and one unreasonable. The first being that, my mother, along with certain other musicians, was part of a very intense folk music kind of philosophy. They were purists, and I admire that perspective, because they were, they had real, how can I say this, real beliefs and real credentials, that they fought for, and quality, So, and Joni Mitchell was not in that, or had abandoned that, or didn't fit. So she wasn't into it on that sense. But then on the other, I think my mother was also very jealous of her success, and being a fellow Canadian, and was would have, I think she felt always a little bit slighted. And she had to, return to Canada and just, have a less kind of glamorous life. So I think it was either way, no, we never listened to any Joni Mitchell at home. It was verboten. But then speaking of verboten, my husband Jorn, who's German, who also didn't hear Joni Mitchell growing up because he didn't know who she was at all. It just wasn't around. But he discovered her a few years ago and just became this rabid Joni fan, as some people become. And I went along with him on that journey and got to discover all of her songs. And myself, a big fan of her work now. So and my mother passed away, so it's okay.
Well, what a fun way to discover music with your husband. And that's the thing I love about music. I mean, among a million things, but is that it's always there to be discovered.
Yes.
And, 50 years from now, someone's going to discover Joni Mitchell for the first time, and it's going to be just as exciting for them.
Yeah. But we're in an interesting moment now. I mean, whether it's Joni or Randy or, Burt Bacharach, a lot of people who are still alive and also in Los Angeles. This is the end. This is the twilight of the gods here, and so I also feel it's nice to be in this place, and to be, to soak up as much of that energy as I can, because it isn't going to last forever. I mean, they will all be gone at some point. And I'm here to take their place.
Yes, you are.
In a nice way, in a gentle way. I'm not going to, yeah.
My first favorite song on the album was Peaceful Afternoon, and I heard you talking about that song, and you said it's got a let's all sing along together vibe, and I laughed when you said that, but then I thought, yeah, that's exactly what it makes me feel like. It's just a big let's sing along together song. Tell me about Peaceful Afternoon.
Yeah, no, I wrote that. My husband, as I said before, he's German, and one of the fabulous things about being in a relationship with a true German is that they are incredibly orderly and organized, and they operate in terms of systems and architecture and stuff in a life. So I being of Irish descent, kind of am the opposite, and it's a nice combination. Anyways, but one of the little caveats in this arrangement is that for every album I have a song about him, and it's been that way for a few albums. It's been that way since Release the Stars. So if you look on every record, there's always a song about him, and this was the latest offering, and I have to say, initially it's always a bit of a pain in the ass to do it, because you're like, oh God, what am I doing? But then you really have to examine you're the most important relationship in your life, arguably, which is your husband or wife, and re-celebrate and recalibrate and keep it going. So it's actually it's a good thing in the end. Not easy always, but good.
Well, as I mentioned, it was my first favorite song on the record, and it seems like every week I'm living and breathing a different one, and one that I can't get out of my head right now is the title track, Unfollow the Rules, and you have recorded that for us here at KEXP.
Yes.
Let's listen to that now.
Okay.
Here's Rufus Wainwright live on KEXP at home.
Sometimes I feel like my heart turns to dust. Unfollow the rules, unswallow the trust. Sometimes I feel like my brain turns to leaves. Unfollow the rules, uncover the thieves of the game. Sometimes I reel in a fish far too small, back into the sea, hook, sinker and all, and behold ruins from before the fall. Stop looking and see, and just heed the call of the plebes. just like Hercules in Thebes was just by just being a man. But I'm no Hercules, and this is Herculean. Tomorrow I will just be feeling the pain. Don't give me
Unfollow the Rules, that's the title track of your new album. And that is such a grandiose and gorgeous song.
Thank
and
you.
again, I want to thank you so much for these beautiful recordings you made for us at KEXP. I mean, what a beautiful rendition of that song.
Thank you.
Your daughter Viva came up with that phrase.
Yes.
And it's so brilliant.
Yeah,
Tell me about that.
Yeah. Well, Viva, she's now 9. But a few years ago, in this very magical age, I would say between kind of like 5 and the end of 7, 5, 6, 7, and there's just this wonderful moment when the consciousness arrives, of her being a kind of a human, or a member of the universe, and there's just this way that kids look at things at that very precious moment where they just put elements together that one doesn't usually kind of match, and it makes so much sense. I mean, the title's Unfollow the Rules, and I think she'd heard a lot of unfollowing kind of in the news, or maybe with Facebook and also just this media world we live in. Like, I'm gonna unfollow that person. Like, she just kind of registered. So it's like a very 21st century thing. And then she's faced with all these rules, that kids have to contend with and kind of comprehend, and it's very difficult. So she just kind of put those two elements together. Like, I'm just gonna push a button and there'll be no more rules, which is just brilliant. And she, announced that at one point, and at that age, and I quickly, wrote it down, and it became, a verse and then a song, and now it's, the name of the album, and yeah, I think it's a very pertinent concept right now, especially, it's interesting because when the album was first going to come out, it was really when the pandemic was getting going, and I was a bit trepidatious about putting that statement out when there was, when the people were really needed to wear masks, which they still do, but there was, this real concentration on having to regulate yourself. So I was a bit nervous about that, but then we had to change the release date to later. And after that point, there'd been the Black Lives Matter protests. There'd been, a lot of Me Too movement stuff. So it wasn't then appropriate to offer that, because we are in a period now when we have to, we have to discuss these rules. We have to really, we don't have to necessarily get rid of them, but we have to go back and really examine why they're here and what they're actually doing. And so Unfollow the Rules is good, because it's not about taking away the rules. It's just about going back and examining them, which I think the world needs to do right now.
What did your daughter think about that phrase capturing your imagination in such a significant way?
Oh, she's very, very excited, and she's what can I say? She's writing songs now, and poetry, and she has a beautiful voice, and I worry too, because it's it's a crazy life, and there's to be an artist, you have to be incredibly vulnerable, and that can be really hard. But on the other hand, everybody in her family does it. So, what are you going to do? All my sisters are singers and songwriters, and both my parents, and both her, she's related to Leonard Cohen on her mother's side, and her uncle's a singer, Adam Cohen. So it's just like, it's like the family business. I mean, you just got to accept it. But we'll see. We'll see what she wants to do. I'm not saying she has to, but, let's be honest here.
Well, yeah, and it must be so fun to see her, become interested in music and other forms of art.
Yes.
Speaking of which, you seem incredibly gleeful about the artwork for this record.
Yes.
It looks like you put a lot of love into the vinyl artwork. You did gorgeous illustrations for every song, and vinyl wasn't really in vogue for a lot of your earlier albums. So you must be kind of giddy to make something tangible and beautiful that people can touch and hold and spend time with. What was that process like for you for this record? What are some of the things you did?
Yeah, no, it's definitely been one of the pluses of this whole experience. And I have to say, it does tie into the pandemic, because there was, suddenly, all the tours were canceled, and I didn't have to go out and kind of do the slog. So I had a lot of time at home, and I had drawn a couple of illustrations for a couple of songs, and then it just became obvious that I should just do the whole record, and I was able to dive into that side of my artistic life, which I did study art briefly at university, but I continued drawing, and it had fallen by the wayside actually. As well, but it is, it's great to be doing that again. There's definitely something about the silence of it, the fact that it has nothing to do with sound. I mean, at least on the surface, and so it's so I'm very fortunate to have that ability, and to escape into the silence a little bit.
A little earlier, you talked about taking on the mantle of some of the great songwriters that preceded you, and you fill that role for some people. I spoke with Mike Hadrius of Perfume Genius earlier this year.
Oh, really? Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, someone I love. We followed him since the beginning of his career. And he listed you as one of his early powerful inspirations.
Wow,
and
that's wonderful to hear. I love his work, so... Especially, he's having a lot of success right now, so it's very exciting to watch that.
Well, it must be wonderful to, see others turning to you as a guide and an inspirational figure for them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, when I say that I'm going to take over the mantle of the great, of my parents' generation, it's a little tongue-in-cheek in the sense that I don't. I'm probably not gonna be as famous or make as much money as a lot of those people was, because it was a different era, it was, and all of that. But I will say that it is, on the more serious side, it's important for me to, nonetheless, really cherish and prize lyrics, as they were, and which they aren't right now in popular music. I mean, lyrics right now are really at the bottom of the barrel, in my opinion, and that has to change. So coming back to lyrics is important. Also, the craft of song. So I think that when I say grabbing the mantle, it's more just like continuing the tradition, and traditions are meant to be passed on. So I'm happy that younger musicians are some of them are getting that message, and I'm a giver, so it's fine. Some people would rather be buried with the sword, but I will pass it on.
Well, it's very clear that lyrics are incredibly important to you.
Yes.
And you cover so much ground in this record. You've broken it up into 3 acts, more or less, and you cover a lot of ground, a lot of emotion here. I'd love to play the next song that you recorded for us now, Alone Time. It's the last song on the record, and it's incredibly powerful.
Thank you.
We're here live on KEXP at Home with Rufus Wainwright.
I need a little alone time, a little dream time, but don't worry, I will be back, baby. I need a little be gone time, a little on my own time, but don't worry, I will be back, baby, to get you on the mist of Avalon, to save you from the cliffs of lovers leaping off, and on and off and on. enough and on and off and on and night. A little alone time, a little dream time, but don't worry, I will be back, baby. I need a little be gone time, a little on my own time, but don't worry, I will be back, baby, to get you. To get you, to get you, to get you.
That was Alone Time, live on KEXP at Home with Rufus Wainwright. And that, as I mentioned earlier, is the last song on the record. It seems very fitting for this time during the pandemic. I'm not sure if you wrote it. I'm guessing that you didn't.
No,
for
I
a
didn't.
time like
I wrote it
this.
years ago. So it's interesting. Yeah.
But
Yeah, no,
for the series-
it's very fitting, and it's and it's happening. So
who knew?
yeah,
There is a lot of hope and love on this record, and I can't tell you how much it has helped me get through this year. It's absolutely gorgeous. And as you mentioned earlier, you've been nominated for a Grammy for the Best Traditional Pop Vocal Album, which is your second nomination, the first for your set of original material. And I imagine it has to feel great to be recognized in this manner.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to be. I mean, it's funny. I mean, I have been thinking a little bit about Nick Cave, who I've spent some time with, but I guess when he was nominated at one point for a Grammy or something, I don't know what it was, he kind of wrote this very charming letter, basically, stating that it really doesn't matter to him and he doesn't, really care, and it doesn't, give him anything. I am completely different from that. I am totally affected by the act of being nominated. I think if I don't win, I'll be okay. I am also aware that it's, you gotta pace yourself in this kind of thing, but, and that eventually I will get a Grammy. But yeah, no, I'm honest about my excitement about it. And even, and maybe it's also just the world we live in right now where any kind of really good news becomes that much more poignant, like we were, when we heard the news, my husband and I, we were in Hawaii and we got a call, from the manager and we started crying, and I don't think it was even about like the Grammy per se. It was just about life continuing, and society, kind of trying its best to, operate in this really tricky time. So, and to be part of that, going forward thing. So yeah, it's I'm happy about it.
Well, I'm very excited for you as well. Congratulations. Well deserved. And
Thank
the
you.
awards are going to be held on January 31st. Do you know what you'll be wearing or how you'll be celebrating?
I don't know. I think I am gonna perform on the pre-cast somewhere. So I will be working, and so I'll have to look good. But and I don't even know. I mean, I'm assuming it'll be virtual, but I don't know I don't think anybody knows yet what the lineup is.
Well, soon to know.
Yes.
Well, Rufus, I can't thank you enough for the generosity of your time today and this gorgeous album. It feels like the process of making this record was a time for you to do what you really wanted to do, and you ended up with a masterpiece. And I just want to
thank
say
you.
bravo.
Oh, thank you
And
so
thank
much.
you.
Okay, and I'll see you in person next time up in Seattle.
We're going to hold you to that. Thank you again. Thank you so much for joining us live on KEXP at Home. It's been such a pleasure to bring live music into our homes this year, and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Discover new music at listener-powered KEXP.org.